What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Chill, where I, Graham G.S. Matthews, break down all the original content you watch on the WWE Network and on Peacock. And today we're talking Season 1, Episode 6 of WWE Evil. Yes, I did forget about the show. On Stephanie McMahon. So the show was obviously released back in March, I believe, right before WrestleMania. I did review the first 5 episodes. It took me a while, like about a month or two. And here we are, fucking 6 months later, past when the show first came out, and I'm still watching it. I have yet to really complete the show, but I started it. I'm going to finish it. I have 3 episodes left, or 2, I guess, after this one. We still have the Ric Flair episode is episode 7, and then the Roman Reigns one caps it off for season 1. So I think they're doing more episodes. Either they've already filmed them, or they're in the process of filming new episodes. By all accounts, I mean, first and foremost, this is not a show, as I've said before, that like hardcore wrestling fans are really going to get a lot out of. Honestly, this is a show I would rather show to people who have not watched the business in a while or have never watched wrestling, period. So that is really kind of the core audience of a show like this, which is why it's on Peacock, so it can be seen by other people who aren't just subscribing to Peacock for the WWE stuff. I've talked to several people who do not watch the weekly product, either who have never watched wrestling or have not watched wrestling in a very long time. I'm talking decades. That saw the show, may have caught the first episode or two, and enjoyed it, because they don't really know a lot about The Miz or Hulk Hogan's heel turn from '96 in WCW. So you're not really going to learn anything new from watching this show. I did not learn anything new from watching this episode on Stephanie McMahon. It also begs the question why they did an episode on Stephanie and not Vince, because this was really just one giant episode on the McMahon family anyway. We heard from Vince. We obviously heard from Stephanie. We heard a lot from Shane. And I think it's interesting, I'm watching and reviewing this episode now, because this came back out in March, and so much has changed within the, behind-the-scenes environment of WWE, specifically with the McMahons, that watching this back now is even more fascinating, because there's a lot of lines I'm thinking, that wasn't true 6 months ago, or it's true now, or it's not true now, but it was 6 months ago, whatever. So it's really interesting watching this back now. Stephanie was always a great heel, and I didn't learn anything new, but it was a little weird. They devoted an entire episode to her, and it wasn't like, it was in the midst of the Vince scandal and we can't focus on Vince. We heard from Vince a lot in this episode. They showed Vince a lot because Vince is central to the character evolution of Stephanie McMahon in WWE. So they may as well have just done it on Vince, who is a far better bad guy than Stephanie, in my opinion, anyway. Stephanie was always a great heel, and she has one of the most devastating slaps in the business. But I thought it was a little weird that one of the best bad guys of all time in Vince did not get his own episode, but his daughter did. But I guess his story kind of ties into Stephanie's anyway, but whatever. So they start off the episode, and there's a lot of talking heads, but I'm just kind of going through the general stuff that they talk about. And the clock's in at around 45 minutes, by the way. They start off the episode with Stephanie recalling being backstage as a kid at WWE, and roaming the halls at a WWE house show, I think in Philly maybe, or in the Northeast, which is where they obviously grew up in Connecticut and whatever, and seeing George the Animal Steel chasing kids backstage. I'm not sure if she knew if the business was real or fake at that point. I don't know if they wouldn't talk about that on a show like this from WWE, but I'm not sure if she knew wrestling was fake or real at that point. But the fact of the matter was, she was terrified of the animal. And he started chasing her, and she ran up to her father, Vince, and grabbed a hold of his leg, and he just started laughing. And it was at that point she understood what it meant to be a performer. And they talk about how Vince became an on-air villain in '97. They don't talk specifically about the Montreal Screwjob, thank God, but that was really what spawned the Vince McMahon on-air heel character in the Attitude Era, and that was really kind of kicked off in the Attitude Era in many ways. She also remembers being used as a pawn in a storyline with The Undertaker in the Ministry of Darkness, and I think it was 1998 or I think it was 1999, in April around that year. Her entire kind of character arc kicked off around that time. She was going to be sacrificed to the gods or something by Taker. Steve Austin saved the day because he's a good guy and he's doing what the good guy babyface should do. And it was ultimately revealed that Vince McMahon, of course, infamously, was the higher power to lure Austin into a trap. What that trap was, I don't remember. Honestly, going through the story the way they do here, a lot of it, what they did back then, made sense. It was very over the top and ridiculous, but a lot of it made sense, and it was a consistent story with everything they did. And I wish we would get more compelling, suspenseful storytelling like that nowadays. It was a long-term storyline back then as well, with the payoff they would ultimately go with. But anyway, so Vince McMahon was the higher power, and that was when the Vince and Stephanie relationship became more complicated. Alita says later on that The McMahon family drama puts succession to shame, which is true in more ways than one, not only with what we've seen on screen, but specifically what's gone on with the family in the last 20 years, behind the cameras as well, specifically in the last couple of months. But anyway, it was after that Stephanie started dating Test on TV. Triple H infamously crashes the wedding of Stephanie and Test with Vince there and reveals that he married Stephanie first in Vegas, which would never fly today, but it was one of the biggest and most memorable Raw angles of all time. So from that, we get Triple H and Vince McMahon booked for Armageddon with stakes. So if Vince won, then Triple H would have to annul the marriage of him and Stephanie. But if Triple H won, he would have to be given a title shot. During the course of the match, Stephanie joined Triple H, turned on her father, and it was this big swerve, and Lita describes her as being pure evil, that being Stephanie, and it was this great big swerve. I have no idea if they were just playing this up for the show or if genuinely people did not see that coming. I wasn't watching back then, so I can't speak to it. I don't know, but it was a very well done angle. So from there, Stephanie got more involved, not just on camera, but behind the scenes as well, learning everything about the business, specifically creatively. She joined the creative team for, I think, SmackDown in 2002 when she was the on-air GM, or maybe it was Raw, I don't remember, but either way. The next step for her was getting in the ring, and she trained, and she realized she was not good at it. She felt like after taking her first back body drop bump, whatever, the next day she felt like she got hit by a fucking train. So she was not very good at it. Despite that, she won the Women's Championship from Jacqueline in an episode of SmackDown in March of 2000. From there, I mean, this isn't all consistent as far as the timeline, but they show Vince making Stephanie the new GM of SmackDown, so the relationship was always going back and forth, and that was in 2002. She talks about the behind-the-scenes sort of stuff and that she can walk into a room full of men and not feel intimidated. She did not find men intimidating as long as you have the confidence, she says. And she kind of just highlights being a woman in business and a male-dominated business like wrestling. And it's interesting stuff when she talks about that. They highlight the Stephanie slap, and Heyman says it can be a real pain in the ass working with Stephanie because you get slapped a lot. They show the slaps to Brie Bella, to Heyman, to Big Show. I remember the Big Show ones. Holy shit. There was one episode of SmackDown, or Raw in 2013, I think it was SmackDown, where she relentlessly slapped Big Show over and over and over. It was brutal. And Shane even says that she hits harder than not just of anyone in her family, but also of almost a majority of the WWE roster. Triple H and Stephanie started to have feelings for each other backstage, and not at this point, but, back when they were first on TV together. And they got married in real life in I think, 2002, 2003. I think it was 2003. They fast forward like 10 years to when the Authority becomes an on-air angle, and the genesis of the Authority was smart and clever and well done. The actual execution of the angle and the damage it did to so many baby faces during that period was just insurmountably bad. Like, it made Raw a fucking awful show. And the long-term storytelling there with the Authority, there was never really a payoff. Like, they had a couple different payoffs with Bryan beating the Authority at WrestleMania and then them losing at Survivor Series 2014 and all this other sort of stuff. But they would always come back every single time. Every single time. And it just far took away from Raw more than it added to Raw. The Authority I absolutely hated for as long as it lasted, on and off for like 5 years in that company. And Stephanie Triple H did good work, but it never really, like I said, added to the program in any meaningful way. In the long term, in the long run of things, at least in my opinion. But they talk about how, they kind of took over on TV when Vince took a backseat behind the scenes as far as being an on-air character. And they mentioned how they had unbeatable power because they were basically, that was the translation was there. They never got their comeuppance. They would sometimes, but in the end, the Authority always wins. That was very true on TV at that point. And Lita teased that maybe they had too much power. And we hear from Dr. fucking Phil again, who they brought back, which was funny, considering he's not a real doctor. But anyway, he says there's always a pecking order within a family, and that was very true and dramatic with WWE and kind of emphasized and enhanced and whatever. They show Shane returning in 2016 to confront Vince and Stephanie at the McMahon, whatever, well, I forgot what they called it, but they show Shane coming back to feud with Vince and Stephanie. They never really had an end game. Shane lost the Taker at WrestleMania, became the GM of Raw anyway. Stephanie was made the commissioner of Raw. Shane the commissioner of SmackDown, and that never really had any proper blow-off. But Shane says that they keep people guessing as far as whether that on-air turmoil expands to real life with Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners? Are they actually like that in real life? And people don't really want to know. And he made a lot of interesting comments here. One, he says that, and why that's interesting is because this was filmed, obviously, a while ago. Shane came back to the company, or was always involved with WWE, but he had that big return on TV at the Rumble, and then he was immediately taken off TV, and there was a lot of backstage turmoil, reportedly, between Shane and Vince. And they had a bit of a falling out. He sent Shane home, and Shane has yet to be back, and Triple H took over in July. I really have no desire to see Shane back as a non-air character at all. I feel like that was his last real run. He was back for 5 or 6 years. No fucking thanks. I do not need to see Shane back on my TV. But it was funny that he said that, because it's like, obviously that was filmed a long time ago, but it's like, what are the actual, behind the scenes, what is the actual tension within the McMahon family at these dinners? Are Shane and Vince on talking terms and stuff like that? Are they on speaking terms? And then he also said, we just keep coming back because people want to see us, which is so fucking untrue. Yeah, people will pop for a Shane McMahon return because they're just sheep, I guess is the wrong word to use, and I hate using that word, but people will go crazy for anything. Honestly, I just speak as a viewer who do not want to see the McMahon family back on TV in any form or fashion, in any angle ever again. It's been done to death. I like Shane. He was at one point the most bearable of the McMahon family, and then he wasn't, and then it just got worse. Please just keep them off television. I feel like he was dead wrong, and people want to see us. Do they? Do they really? Anyway, so Stephanie says that Shane pandered to the fans. Well, she did all the work, which I'm sure there is some truth to that from an on-air, from a reality standpoint, and not just from the standpoint of two on-air characters. Lita even says that Stephanie has no desire to leave the family business. And again, this is where I said it got interesting, because she said that, but then that came out in March. 2 months later, she took a leave of absence from WWE. It was very likely Stephanie would not be back in a position of power in that company as long as Vince was there. Because Triple H also took a backseat. We did not hear from Triple H, I don't think, on this episode. They probably filmed this when he had his health issues, so I don't think we heard from him on this episode at all. But yeah, it was interesting because, again, if I had watched this in April or May, I would be like, well, that's not true because she just took a leave of absence, but now she's back as the president now that Vince is gone in light of all the allegations. So it's very, very interesting. When asked about whether she would let her daughters join the business, she said she would, but only after earning it, and maybe even more so than she did. And then Natalya makes this dumb fucking comment in which she's like, our act is timeless. And it's like, no, it's not timeless. It's stale and old. Please do not do it again. Do not encourage them to be back. And then Stephanie even said that she may have grown to be even more vindictive than her father from a character standpoint, which is probably, it's debatable, but I would say that's likely not true. But anyway, that was the Stephanie McMahon episode of WWE Evil in a nutshell. Good stuff. Again, you learn absolutely nothing, but it is interesting to relive the McMahon family drama as if we haven't already relived it a million times in the last 20 years. No Linda McMahon at all. They do not really reference Linda. They may have shown her once as far as like old archive footage, but they don't do any new comments with Linda. Obviously, it came out in June that, which I did not know, Linda and Vince do not live together anymore. They're technically still legally married, but they haven't been partners in a very long time. I don't even remember the last time she did anything with WWE as far as doing interviews for stuff like this. So I don't know. Not that she would have added a lot. She really would have added nothing at all because her on-air character was never great either. But yeah, she was noticeably absent from this episode, and now we may know why. But yeah, this was decent stuff. If you missed it, you will not learn anything new. I repeat that. I emphasize that. But as far as, for a casual fan, if you want to show it to someone who's never watched wrestling or hasn't watched in a long time or doesn't truly get the drama of WWE and the McMahon family stuff, if you want an introduction to the McMahon family storyline in WWE, this would be it. It's more of a McMahon episode than it is a Stephanie episode, but the Stephanie elements were still well done. So thank you guys for checking out my review. I appreciate it. I am slowly but surely catching up on all the content I've missed since WrestleMania, which is fucking, 5 or 6 months ago, I know. But I've missed a lot. Broken Skull Sessions, Evil. I will watch it all. I will review it all for you fine folks here on the channel in the days and weeks to come. So stay tuned. Have an awesome one, guys. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.